Hey, folks, and welcome to the 24/7 DCT podcast. I'm Brian Wall, your host with over 2 decades of experience across 4 countries in the areas of mental health and addiction, with hopes of promoting awareness for listeners that join us for candid conversations about mental health as we explore the ups and downs of life and how to build resilience and happiness. Are you ready to prioritize your mental health, your mental well-being, and take control of your life? Well, if so, you came to the right place because 24/7 DCT podcast offers practical tools and resources for building a happier, healthier you. For more information, be sure to follow us on all major social media platforms by searching 24/7 DCT and online at 247dct.org. This week's episode is yet another effort on our behalf to more closely track our tribe and bring awareness to issues like mental health, addiction, general wellness, and everything in between. Let's go ahead and get started with another opportunity to meet a member of the 24/7 DCT family. Dr. Veronica Harper is a 59-year-old mental health professional that's been retired from the state of Alabama for 7 years. However, she returned to the workforce after only 3 months in retirement in 2016 due to pure boredom. she wanted to get back to work, tired of being at home. She's the second oldest of 6 siblings and has a long work history in many people-oriented positions, including social worker, case manager, counselor, mental health professional, director of Upward Bound programs, director of student support services, and remote counselor. She holds a PhD in human services, a master's in counseling psychology, a bachelor in psychology with minors in criminal justice and business, and associates in office management. Her dissertation, which is of interest to me, and an area of primary interest to her, is exploring the generational differences amongst African American men's decision to seek mental health counseling. She also considers herself well-versed in the areas of teen suicide, confrontation versus communication, African American studies in school, dealing with anger issues, the influence of social media on children, and the lack of rehabilitation in correctional facilities impact on repeat offenders. Dr. Harper is currently serving in the role of remote licensed professional counselor with 24/7 DCT's clinical team in Alabama, and we are pumped to have her. Let's bring her on. There she is, Dr. Harper. How are you? Welcome to the
Yeah,
show.
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I think we're going to start tweaking our onboarding with bringing folks on the show. There's a bit of a delay, and listeners are probably thinking, "Where do they go?" So I'm
I
gonna
know.
I'm gonna streamline that process a bit. But it's good to have you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. So,
Hmm.
I want to go ahead and just jump in a bit with our topic of the day, and that's based on the confrontation versus communication
Hmm.
area of interest that you have. Certainly an area of interest of mine as well. So I'll just start off with the basics. What is the difference between confrontation and communication?
Well, it has a lot to do with the tone, I think. With confrontation, your tone is going to be kind of aggressive,
Hmm.
more emotional driven. Um, with communication, it's more just a conversation, exchanging opinions or providing information. Now, with confrontation, sometimes it can be where you challenging a person.
Hmm.
You know, you're trying to confront them about something that they have either avoided or blocked out or didn't know that they
Hmm.
were doing.
Yeah.
So with communication, it's a little bit more, although confrontation is a form of communication,
Hmm.
but it depends on the tone because your voice can elevate with confrontation and
Hmm.
sometimes with communication, but not as much as with confrontation. Your voice is going to elevate and it's going to be driven. It's going to be trying to state a point. You pointing out something to
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Good point. A lot to do with paraverbals, nonverbals, body language in general, right? So
Right.
like that
Right.
stance, I think I did a lot of studying on paraverbals, nonverbals, did a lot of crisis intervention training and stuff. And obviously that's a big piece of what we're trying to read as therapists when we're in the midst of crisis intervention. And so I couldn't agree with you more with the tone. It's most folks want to stick in the realm of communication rather than confrontation. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think most of us like to be confronted unless we have
No,
to
we
be.
don't. And some people don't like doing the confronting. Some
Yes,
people have issues with confronting others.
very good
So,
point.
yeah. So they have to learn how to do it, when to do it, and how to do it, what to
Yeah,
say and what not to say. And like you said, the body communication, that has a lot to do with it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you you covering this topic today, because it's kind of a basic. It's one of those things that we do need to improve on as a people, because oftentimes there's this miscommunication, this misunderstanding in the midst of that communication, and it creates way more chaos that needs to
Oh,
happen in
yeah.
the first place. It
Yeah.
starts off as something very basic, and then it snowballs into this trivial argument over we're not even sure what. How many
Right.
times have you been in an argument? I'm not sure if are you married or
No, no.
okay. So I'm married, and I can't tell you how many times I've been in an argument with my wife, and I've woke up the next morning and had to ask what we were fighting about, because I don't remember,
Okay.
and I need to know because I might need to
Yeah.
still be mad about it.
Yeah. Or you might need to try to correct it or whatever.
Exactly. What did I say again? Okay, was that wait, is this a fight worth having still? Oh, it is. Okay. All right. I'm in it. I want to keep fighting. Look at me, I'm fighting, right?
I know it. Because hindsight is 2020, and you forget to say something in that point, or either you said something in the heat of the moment that you didn't want to say. You got to go back and
Yes.
take back. So a lot of times I try to go back in my mind, okay, now what did he say, or what did I say?
Yes.
I should have said this and I should have said that. So
It's
we
weird
have to think
because
about that.
yeah, and when you're communicating with somebody, if you get into those arguments, oftentimes I was doing some studying today on how anger inhibits our processing. So it creates this inefficiency in our processing, um, as it relates to I forget the systems. I wish I would remember. I was reading, it was super interesting. It made
Mhm.
sense though, because when we're angry, we don't think things through all the way. We say things we
Right.
don't mean, and then the
Mhm.
next morning when you wake up, I I I understand why I have to ask, like, what were we fighting about again? I don't
Mhm.
remember, right?
Mhm.
Because I was in the heat of the moment. I just look at me, I'm fighting, I'm arguing. Look at me, right?
Yeah,
And
I think it's sometimes because we are focusing on what we want to hear, what we don't want to hear. And so we just hear just the blob and we go
yes,
from there.
yeah.
And sometimes that gets us into trouble.
Yes, agreed. So what are the
Mhm.
different types of confrontation?
Okay, so now I studied that a little bit, and of course, I went online and researched, and I got
Of
somebody
course.
else stuff, Dahlia or May or somebody like that. So
Mhm,
I mixed it up. So I said, okay, there's direct, there's indirect, negative confrontation, emotional confrontation.
mhm,
Um, those are the only ones that I really want to talk about.
mhm,
Now, direct is when you address the person, whatever the issue is, you confront the person.
mhm,
Indirect, you might be confronting the issue with the person. I don't know if that
mhm,
makes sense or not,
mhm.
but you confronting the issue, that whatever the problem is. Sometimes it is the person, when you go direct, hey, you did this, you shouldn't have done that. And
Mhm.
then when you talking to the person, you say, well, it wasn't so much you, it was so much what you were presenting or what you were saying, what the issue
Yeah.
was at hand. Negative, most of the time the two people lose sight on what they're talking about in the beginning, what the
Mhm.
real issue is. And you can turn confrontation into positive. A lot of people think that it is just negative all the time, but
Yeah.
sometimes you can get positive confrontation if you are receptive to listening to criticism. That's what you have to take in mind, okay, it's they criticizing me, but it's for a reason, it's positive, it's something that I need to correct in the future.
Right, right.
So, the emotional confrontation is whenever you're trying to provide support to someone who's maybe sad or depressed, and you
Mhm.
bringing out little things that you see that's going on with them, saying, okay, well, maybe you are, you are feeling this way because of this, or maybe this made you feel sad or depressed. You
Mhm.
confronting them when maybe they're not, seeing the whole big picture themselves.
Right.
If that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, it's oftentimes when we're getting confronted, we're kind of sometimes we wear blinders. We don't hear what's being said, and we're almost
Right.
listening so we can respond and defend ourselves. And
Mhm.
I love what you said. Sometimes confrontation can be very positive. If we're open to it, we're open to change, we're open to improvement, then
Mhm.
it puts us in a place to really hear those areas we need to improve. And
Right.
it's that's our job, right? If we're receiving some confrontation, and sometimes it doesn't come across so pretty, but
Mhm.
that's on the other side, right? So the person that's confronting probably needs to be that person that understands the individual and can communicate in a way that
Mhm.
meets their personality type. There's some, I've been clinical
Mhm.
director and done a couple of the positions that you have been in the past as well. And so leading teams essentially, and you really got to know your team. You got to have the people in the right seat on the bus, and you got to know
Right.
what makes them sing and what makes them sit and what makes them run.
Mhm.
And, you know, and
Yeah,
so
you got to know
understanding your team.
yeah, how is this person going to take this, based on your rapport that you have with them,
Yeah.
and if you like with your clients, you've been with them in sessions, you got to establish that rapport before you can know that they are receptive
Yeah.
to change or to confrontation.
Yeah. So how should we handle, ideally, how should we handle confrontation? What would you
Well,
recommend?
yeah, we have to consider a lot of things. You got to consider the timing. Sometimes it's just not feasible to go into confrontation with a person.
Hmm.
Consider where you are. I wouldn't like to be confronted in a crowd of my colleagues.
Good point.
I wouldn't like that, or my employees or whatever.
Hmm.
And you have to take all that in consideration. Consider the person's personality, like you said, because they may be the type of person that gets real angry, just like that.
Yeah.
And choose your words. You got to choose your words when you're talking
Hmm.
to anybody and when you're trying to confront them, because some people hang on words. They say, "Oh, he said this," and they don't hear anything else but just that one word.
Right.
Um, so you have to consider all those things when you're trying to confront somebody.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
I find for me, I've learned I don't do a whole lot of my best thinking in the world in the heat of the moment if I'm upset. I
me
think I'm really
either.
bad at it, honestly, And so I try to stay away from that. I'm not always good at it, but I have found that if I can step away from that emotion and allow myself some breathing room to process it, it improves what I get from the conversation. So if I'm being confronted, and I have been in the past, I'm not perfect by any means, and certainly have been put in my place a number of times by supervisors. Thankfully, a lot of them were folks I looked up to and were more than willing to
Hmm.
take it from. But when receiving that, I tried to just listen,
Hmm.
and then when I pull myself out of the conversation process a little bit, I'd go back to them and share with them. I want to address what they wanted to address first, but
Hmm.
then I
Hmm.
share with them how maybe they could have addressed me differently next time. I'm more receptive if I'm not in a
Yeah.
group of my colleagues, or you're not doing it during my lunch hour, or right
Hmm.
after I told you my kid got in trouble at school and I'm really stressed out about it, or whatever the case may
Right.
be. But
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's just our role as individuals to advocate for ourselves, and I think that's important too, because that helps whoever's leading us, whoever our lead is. It helps, whoever that is in the family, the business, whatever it is. It gives them a chance to better understand us and get to know our wiring and what makes us tick.
Right.
So how do you communicate without being confrontational? Is that possible? How does that? What'd you find on that?
Mm, Well, excuse me.
That would be
Again, I think
ideal,
it's
wouldn't it? If you could get your way
yes,
with ever,
yeah. I think
never being
again it goes
confrontational.
back to choosing the words that we say, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and our level of our tone of our voice.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go in there yelling at somebody, some people just talk loud. I talk loud,
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes I'm not aware that I'm talking loud. And then somebody say, "You got to talk so loud." So you got to kind of listen to yourself, and you got to listen to the cues from the other person as well.
Yes.
So, you got to just choose your words, because people are going to be more receptive when you are kind of gentle with it. You can confront people gently, without
Mm-hmm.
escalating your voice or,
Mm-hmm.
talking loudly to them.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are, our types of communication: assertive, non-assertive, aggressive, and passive aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it depends on your personality as well when you
Yeah.
start speaking with somebody,
Yeah. That's
if you are assertive or not.
yeah. That's so true, because regardless if that's your personality type, it's again not going to work with everybody. So you got to ebb and
Mm-mm.
flow with what you got to read the room,
Right.
right?
You do.
So like you know, I oftentimes when I was leading teams, I would, if there's folks that were alphas,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They
Like
typically
leaders.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
typically handle confrontation. They understand that as a piece of the process. So I didn't typically have to tiptoe around them. I could be very direct with them and less emotional and more direct about what I needed to say. And I didn't
Mhm.
have to be a jerk about it. Being direct is how I stay out of being a jerk. I just was
Yeah.
very direct with them. And then there's folks that just don't handle confrontation well. Like I was their supervisor. If I came across too direct, they would literally go to the bathroom and cry afterwards, right? Because it's
Mhm.
just not their way of communicating. And maybe there's some transference there. Maybe their dad talked to him like that, and their dad
Probably.
wasn't the nicest guy in the world. I don't know, but
I know. I was a supervisor before,
yeah.
and I would talk so when I'm confronting the one of the employees, my voice would be just like this.
Mm-hmm.
She went away and told everybody else I was in there talking loud and um just really, really getting on to her. And I said,
Right.
where did she get that from? I said, I didn't raise my voice not one time.
Yeah.
But that's what she took out of it. So,
Yeah.
everybody's perception is different. So
Self-awareness.
yeah, self-awareness. And so we have to be careful in any time when we speak to somebody about anything, we confront them. Everybody can't take confrontation, criticism, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes confrontation can be received as conflict,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of know the difference and the edge in between.
Right. Right. That's
So
it reminds me when in the past when I was it can be looked at as conflict. I love that you said that because it's not a confrontation is not always conflict.
mm-mm,
Right?
it's
And
not.
so, right, exactly. It doesn't have to be that way, right?
Mm-mm,
And so sometimes I would, when I was leading teams, confronting one of my staff on whatever issue was going on, um, I would sometimes say that, hey, this is going to come across pretty harsh, and you're
mm-hmm,
probably going to feel a certain way about it. I just want you to know up front, I don't mean it that way. I'm just
right.
not sure how else to say it. So this is going to
Mm-hmm,
come across very direct. I just need to make sure you hear my concerns and correct the things that need to be corrected. That's really what I'm after. This is not a
mm-hmm.
reflection of you, your character, how I feel about you as a person or a staff. I would always preface and then I
I
would
was just
lead it.
gonna say that's preparing them for it, so that they
Exactly.
won't go off and take it the wrong way. So that's
Exactly.
good. That's
Yeah,
good.
that seemed to work pretty well. So
Mhm.
gaslighting. We were going to talk a little bit
Gaslighting.
about that. What tell our listeners what gaslighting is, a little
Uh-huh.
definition. And then how does
That's
that complicate the communication process, in your
Ooh, it
opinion?
complicates it a lot because
Yes, ma'am.
when you manipulating somebody's train of thought or their mind or their sanity, you
Yes.
trying to tell them no, that's not what it is. When
Mm-hmm.
in reality it is what they are saying. You
Yeah.
trying to manipulate their mind and their thoughts and their emotions, and it can complicate communication really bad. Cause see, what if I'm listening to your every word, and if you tell me it's tomato, and I said, no, I know it's a potato, and you tell me that long enough, then what? You want me to start believing that,
Right.
whether it
You're gonna
is or
start
not.
second guessing yourself. Well, did he say
Second guessing
potato? I
yourself.
don't even. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So then you can't communicate with the person because you're not sure of yourself.
Right.
When you're
Right.
not sure of yourself, and that was the main objective. They wanted you to be unsure of yourself when they
Yeah.
gaslighting you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm pretty sure that happens in relationships, on the job,
Yes.
um, in a lot of different situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's I always tell clients that, when I'm talking with clients, say
Mhm.
we the topic gaslighting comes up and it's often like, I'm not sure if I was gaslighted or not, I'm not sure what. And I always say, when you came away from that conversation, did you feel a little crazy? Did you feel like you were losing your mind a little bit? They're like, yeah, I kind of did. You got gaslighted.
That's
Right?
right. You
If
got
you walk away from a conversation and you feel confused about what just happened, like you're asking yourself, like,
yeah,
what just happened? Right?
yeah.
You probably
Hmm.
just got gaslighted. You got somebody
Gaslighted,
that's
right?
using the situation and the information to turn it around back on you to cause you to appear as the aggressor and them the
Hmm.
victim. And it's
Right.
just confusing because you think, wait a minute, you're the one that came in here and confronted me about
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
come you're the victim all of a sudden? This everything's just kind of backwards and flipped.
Yeah, they manipulating the whole situation.
Yes.
So, and turning everything around on
It's
you.
enough to drive you nuts,
Yeah, it is because
you
you go back
know?
and you replay the whole thing in your mind, and that's what they want you to do. To say, okay, maybe he was right. Maybe he was right what he said, and then the whole time he's not.
Yeah. And
So,
so one of the things I try to do with that in hopes that it's helpful for listeners. I found it to be helpful. I just stay very black and white in situations like that. I stay out of emotion because if you ramp up on emotion, that's exactly what those kind of
Yeah.
folks want. That communication style, gaslighting, that's what that's after, is getting you off your game, throwing you off derailing you a bit from your thought process.
Yeah.
And then nothing gets accomplished. So
Nothing.
staying grounded in what you know to be true and
Mm-hmm.
being very direct about that. And sometimes you got to agree to disagree. Like,
Right.
I know for a fact that didn't happen. I'm not sure what to say about the fact that you believe it did happen. We don't have a recording. We don't have any cameras. I'm not sure what to tell you, but I know what I said, and it wasn't what you're saying I said. Right?
Exactly.
And
That's
it is
right.
what
Have
it is.
that. You got to have that confidence in yourself,
Yes.
you know, because they prey on the weak people like that who don't have that confidence in themselves, and they can gaslight them easily.
Yeah. And ideally, if you can recognize those sorts of manipulative communication styles, the best thing in the world to do is, once you realize it's happening, just pull out of the conversation. Just be like,
Yes, walk
can we,
away.
yeah, let's take a time out and let's revisit this maybe in a couple hours. And it gives yourself a chance, it gives yourself a chance to pull your thoughts
Right.
together and refocus, recenter a bit, so you don't drift off into no man's land with all this manipulation and misguidance that's going on.
Right.
So lastly, I want to hear your thoughts on a question from one of our listeners. They
Okay.
had shared, how do I tell my therapist something hard or embarrassing? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first you got to establish that rapport between the counselor and the client, so that they can feel comfortable with knowing that you're not going to judge them, you know, or you're not gonna, well, you're gonna listen to what they say. And once the client can feel that, because you can feel that rapport, you can feel comfortability in any session. I think
Yes.
if the counselor creates that environment for you, then you can feel free to say, okay, well, maybe I can just go ahead and say this, and she's not gonna laugh at me or judge me,
Right.
or anything like that.
Right.
The environment, it has to be where that client can, that person can feel comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something I think that we do really well at 24/7 DCT, just the telehealth platform, doing it through Zoom and, just digital, essentially digital care team, right? That's what the DCT stands for. And that's what we do. We're really good at establishing that rapport very quickly with clients and helping them feel comfortable with sharing what they need to in order to get the gains, to enjoy the progress they seek. And I always tell clients, like, if you're not feeling comfortable sharing anything, don't
Don't share it until you get ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all. You just tell them, when you're ready, we can talk about this. We don't have to talk about it now, but when you are ready.
Yeah, we're just
And then
co-pilots in the journey,
right. You have to assure them that, okay, I'm gonna make it okay for you to talk. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna push you. I'm not gonna put pressure on you. It's just when you are ready to talk.
Right.
And there'll be no judging, there'll be no laughing, or this is strictly confidential.
Yeah. And I've always really respected clients that told me, Brian, I really want to share something with you, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable sharing it with you. That's wonderful. Like, I've praised that kind of feedback. That's great. You were just super vulnerable, super open and upfront with me about where you're at with a thought, with a feeling, a topic, whatever it is. And I really appreciate that. So that would be the next thing I would suggest. If you're in a place where you're not feeling comfortable, maybe mention that, like, hey, there's a couple things I want to talk about, but I'm just not sure how to bring them up because I'm kind of uncomfortable about it. And I don't know if that's you or me or the topic, but maybe we can talk about the fact that I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Maybe that's a good place to start.
So we can always put a pin in this and come back to it,
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
each session, you grow more and you be able to get more comfortable with that person, and they'll feel like, okay, they get more relaxed and say, well, let's talk about this, and you don't act surprised, I guess, when they do open up to you. So
yes, very good. And so I hope, folks, that this has been helpful in some level with understanding a bit more about communication, the basics at least, and some of the things that may hinder some of that communication with another, and the confrontation piece. If something pops up that's not ebbing and flowing the the way it should, how to handle
Mhm.
that. And I hope this
How to
was
handle it, right.
at least scratching the surface a bit for you and helping you better understand that really it is about self-awareness, and it's about
Mm,
listening to understand rather than to
mhm.
respond. So if you're interested in engaging with therapists like Dr. Harper, you can find more information online at 247dct.org. So don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to join you today in sorting out all that stuff that seems hopeless and get you back on the right track. Dr. Harper, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to cover some other things, so if you want to sit tight and listen
Mhm.
along, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, and I certainly enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Welcome to the team. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That brings us to Real Talk with Brian, and this week's encouragement is brought to you by Margaret Miller, who said, "Most conversations are simply monologues delivered in the presence of a witness." Ouch. Ouch. As painful as it is to hear, it's so true, folks. We all love to hear ourselves talk and often listen to prepare a response rather than genuinely understand someone else. I'd encourage you all this week to say what you mean what you say after you've listened first. Be present and intentional about joining others in the living, breathing experience that is communication. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, it
You can
is.
also follow my weekly trilogy series on LinkedIn at hashtag Be Real with Brian to gain insight in the areas of mental health, addiction, and general wellness. I appreciate everyone that joined us today. If you're interested in gaining practical advice and expert insights for living your best life, join us weekly on the 24/7 DCT podcast for support and to connect with others that genuinely understand what you're going through. Again, be sure to check us out on all major social media platforms by searching 24/7 DCT and online at 247dct.org. We look forward to spending time with you next week as we welcome yet another guest who's committed to getting you feeling better.